procurement procedures or processes in appointment of Accenture. Another allegation, SARS irregularly extended the SARS IT tender for 12 years, resulting in fruitless, wasteful expenditure that has escalated to 8 billion to date. That SARS purchased an IT company by the name of Interfront to an amount of 72 million, whilst the company was worth 2 million. Another allegation that Minister Gordhan violated the executive members' ethics code by deliberately misleading the National Assembly in failing to disclose that he had met the members of the Gupta family or their associates since taking office. I've decided to focus the first part of my investigation into the following issues. The allegation that Minister Gordhan violated the executive members' ethics code by deliberately misleading the National Assembly in failing to disclose that he had met with the member of a Gupta family since taking office. The allegation that during his tenure as SARS Commissioner, Mr. Gordhan established an intelligence unit in violation of the South African intelligence prescripts. The allegation that SARS failed to follow proper procurement procedures when procuring intelligence equipment, which the intelligence unit utilized for gathering intelligence. The allegation that SARS failed to follow recruitment processes when employing the employees working in that unit, and the allegation that the intelligence unit carried out its operations irregularly and unlawfully, and the allegation that Mr. Pillay was appointed to the position of as Deputy SARS Commissioner, subsequently as SARS Commissioner or Acting SARS Commissioner, whilst he did not possess the necessary qualifications for the post. So the second part of the investigation, which is not dealt with, which is deferred to the second part, relates to the other issues I've mentioned relating to appointment of recruitment of Becky and Johan, and the unlawful monies received by Johan through his bank account, the Makwakwa allegation, the procurement-related complaints, because these procurement-related complaints we're also investigating, since there's another matter we are busy with, or a complaint which was received in 2016 relating to the IT companies which were appointed, or the even extension of this tender contract and the escalation of the costs to 8 billion. And the allegation that Minister Gordhan in 2012 pursued the tax affairs of the current EFF president. So these ones we have deferred them to the second part of the investigation. The main focus was on the Executive Members Ethics Act, and those are the issues we have then identified. So the first one is that. The second one is the whether Minister Gordhan, when he was the SARS Commissioner, established the intelligence unit. The third one, whether the procurement procedures for those equipment, the employment issues relating to people who work there, and whether that unit carried its work unlawfully, and whether Mr. Pillay's appointment as Deputy SARS, whilst he did not have the necessary qualifications. So the reason for issuing this report in separate volumes is based firstly on the requirements of the Executive Members Ethics Act, which has strict turnaround times of 30 days. Secondly, the issue relating to SARS intelligence unit is of public interest and scrutiny and needs to be dealt with conclusively. The investigation was conducted by way of correspondence, analysis of documentation, consideration of relevant laws and prescripts, and case law. So the policies which were considered is the Constitution, and especially the Executive Members Ethics Act, the National Strategic Intelligence Act, which amongst others issues relating to intelligence and security services in South Africa, the Tax Administration Act, the Public Finance Management Act, the SARS Revenue, in fact South African Revenue Services Act, and the provisions relating to interception of communication and provision of communication-related information, the 2002 Act. So again, for your information, the Public Protector Act, Section 6, subsection 9, which gives the Public Protector a discretion to entertain matters which arose more than 2 years from date of occurrence of the incident, and in deciding special circumstances that may be taken into account in exercising this discretion favorably in accepting the complaint. Consideration is given to the nature of the complaint, the seriousness of the allegations, whether the outcome of the investigation into the complaint can rectify systemic problems in state administration, whether the matter can successfully be investigated, with due consideration to the available evidence, records relating to the incident, whether there are any competent alternative remedies available to the complainant, and the overall impact of the investigation, whether prejudice suffered by the complainant persists, and whether refusal to investigate the matter perpetuates the violation of Section 195 of the Constitution, and whether the remedial action will redress the imbalances of the past, and what constitutes special circumstances will depend on the merits of each case. So my observation in this matter is that I need to state clearly that my investigation of the establishment and activities of the intelligence unit by SARS should not be viewed as stifling the effectiveness and efficiency of SARS in their investigation into tax evasions and the curbing of illicit economy, but is to ensure that they do not encroach in the territory of the state security agency, and also they do not violate Section 209 of the Constitution, and also they follow, or they when they conduct investigations, they follow the prescripts relevant. And further, in this particular issue, my observation is that what will resolve this matter between SARS and State Security Agency is to have an MOU, a signed MOU, to utilize the services of state security as and when it's needed, because there are processes which are followed if then they need to investigate issues of illicit economy or issues relating to tax violations. Having considered the evidence at my disposal, the allegation that Mr. Gordhan violated the Executive Members Ethics Code by deliberately misleading the National Assembly in failing to disclose that he met with a member of the Gupta family and associates since taking office is substantiated. That Mr. Gordhan considered not to have disclosed that he actually met the member of the Gupta family and an associate of the family in 2012. He contended that at the time of his response to parliamentary question, he could not recall, as he had forgotten about the meeting at which Mr. Ajay Gupta was present. According to his affidavit to the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, that it was only after being reminded by Mr. Mkhwebane, who at the time was his chief of staff. I find this rather implausible when one considers the prominence of the subject of state capture in South Africa. I therefore find that his conduct in this regard is in violation of paragraph 2 of the Executive Ethics Code, and accordingly amounts to a conduct that is inconsistent with his office as a member of Cabinet as contemplated by Section 96 of the Constitution. The allegation of establishment of an intelligence unit in violation of the South African intelligence prescripts It's also substantiated. In terms of the national legislation, SARS is not mentioned as one of the national intelligence structures established in terms of the National Strategic Intelligence Act, and can only work with other law enforcement agencies within the principles of cooperative governance in achieving it. SARS, under the guidance and management of Mr. Ivan Pillay as the General Manager, Enforcement and Risk Division, established the intelligence unit without following or without involving NIA, which is now called SSA, which is State Security Agency. The Commissioner of SARS is the accounting officer. Therefore, evidence indicates that even prior to Mr. Gordhan's memorandum to Mr. Minister Manuel, who was the Minister of Finance then, SARS had already began operating a unit that gathered information covertly. However, as the accounting officer, Mr. Gordhan should have been aware, and I believe was aware, that the unit had already started operating. Mr. Pillay reported directly to Mr. Gordhan as Commissioner of SARS. The establishment of the unit with the approval of Mr. Gordhan as the accounting officer was in breach of Section 209 of the Constitution, in terms of which only the President may establish such a covert information gathering unit. I further note that Mr. Makhashula has misrepresented himself under oath by denying the existence of the intelligence unit, even if the unit was never called the rogue unit at SARS. The operations and functions of the CBCU, a unit that existed, were similar. The conduct of Mr. Gordhan, as referred to, again, is in violation of Section 209 of the Constitution. And regarding whether SARS failed to follow proper procurement processes in procuring the equipment, that is also substantiated. Although SARS failed to provide me with the documents relating to the procurement of equipment for the CBCU, NRG, and subsequently SPU, those are the acronyms which were used for this unit, I have evidence at my disposal which confirm the existence of such equipment, and it is extremely impossible that a unit carrying out such investigations on behalf of SARS would not procure this equipment. The only contention by SARS being that it was not conducting illegal operations. However, if its operations were lawful, it is unclear why SARS and or its former employees will keep procurement of equipment such a guarded secret. I can only come to the conclusion that proper procurement processes were not adhered to, and such conduct amounted to the violation of the PFMA, and I must indicate that I do have evidence in my possession that indeed such equipments were procured, and I'm of the view that failure and blatant refusal by SARS and its former employees to provide me with the records to confirm the purchasing of the said equipment and the whereabouts and is unwarranted, and it's aimed at perpetuating that there was no such intelligence unit at SARS. The recruitment also, it was the allegation that there were no recruitment processes which were followed is also substantiated. Although SARS failed to provide me with policy and documentation on this, I had evidence in my possession because there was an investigation which was conducted, was never finalized by my predecessor, but then the only thing was that it was finalized at the level of a chief investigator when we were informed that inspector of intelligence was investigating the matter. Therefore, this information which we had were the policies and the recruitment relating to all these officials, and the apparent denial by Mr. Gordhan of any involvement in this the recruitment is improbable. And the Skakane report also confirms that Mr. Gordhan played a role in the recruitment of Mr. Van Lochenberg. I've also indicated earlier that Mr. Makhashula denied knowing this, and I think that was also pure misrepresentation to the public protector. And I have also noted that prior to Mr. Gordhan's submission of memorandum to the Minister of Finance, Mr. Trevor Manuel, Mr. Pillay already had begun recruiting members to partake in the operations of surveillance, and this is then in violation of the Constitution and its maladministration. The next one, the irregular, the unit carried irregular and unlawful intelligence operations. That is also substantiated. Despite denials by SARS, I have evidence before me which indicates that during June 2007 until November 2007, Mr. Pillay and Mr. Van Rensburg irregularly procured Mr. Lombard and Mr. Duval, and they authorized them to intercept communication within the offices of DSO and those of NPA without an interception direction issued by a designated judge in terms of the regulation of interception of communication and provision of communication. I think what needs to be clear, that can be done, but then the judge needs to authorize that. But again, that is done within the State Security Agency parameters. There is further evidence at my disposal that of an unauthorized interception of private communications of prominent members of society, as well as surveillance by intelligence unit of SARS for unknown reasons. The conduct of SARS officials in such unauthorized interception and surveillance is in violation of this legislation I've mentioned. Regarding whether Mr. Pillay was appointed to the position whilst he did not possess the necessary qualifications, the allegation whether Mr. Pillay was appointed is substantiated, and the position of Deputy Commissioner was a new title and a position which SARS formulated through a new business model. The new model identified persons holding executive positions through skills and expertise, aligned values and principles, as well as behavioral competencies. The sole use of the new business model as a blanket benchmark for the appointment of Mr. Pillay, specifically to this position of Deputy Commissioner, was irregular and in violation of Section 195 of the Constitution. The appropriate remedial action I'm taking, or remedial actions, are the following. The President of the Republic of South Africa to take note of the findings in this report insofar as they relate to the erstwhile Minister of Finance, Mr. Gordhan, and to take appropriate disciplinary action against him for his violation of the Constitution and the Executive Ethics Code within 30 days of issuing this report. The second one, the Speaker of the National Assembly, within 14 working days of receipt of this report, refer Mr. Gordhan's violation to the Code of Ethical Conduct and Disclosure of Members' Interests of Assembly and Permanent Council members to the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interests for consideration in terms of the provisions of paragraph 10 of the Parliament Code of Ethics. The Minister of State Security, within 90 days of issuing of this report, act in line with the Intelligence Services Amendment Act, implement in totality the Office of the Inspector General's report of intelligence report dated 31 October 2014. Within 30 days of this report, ensure that all intelligence equipment utilized by SARS intelligence unit is returned, audited, and placed into the custodian of the State Security Agency. Within 14 days of issuing of this report, availed a declassified copy of the report to the Public Protector. The National Director of Public Prosecutions to note that I am aware that there are currently criminal proceedings underway against the implicated former SARS officials, and that effective steps should be taken to finalize the court processes, as the matters has been reminded, and also within the spirit of the Constitution. The Commissioner of the South African Police Services, within 60 days, investigate the criminal conduct of Mr. Gordhan, Pillay, and officials involved in the SARS intelligence unit. for violation of Section 209 of the Constitution and Section 3 of the National Strategic Intelligence Act, including Mr. Magashula's conduct of lying under oath. I look forward to the full implementation of the remedial action in these reports. I reiterate that mere action of instituting a review proceedings does not suspend implementation. If anyone wish to both institute review proceedings and suspend the implementation, I advise them to obtain a court interdict staying the implementation. It is important that we draw distinction between an appeal and a review. Failure to do this might amount to acting in a manner that is inconsistent with the Constitution and the law. I wish to close with the following quotes from one of the iconic late former President Nelson Mandela, and another from the Bible. At the height of the struggle against apartheid, President Mandela said, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." And the book of Esther 4, chapter 4, it says, "And so I will go to the king, which is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." Thank you.
Thank you, Public Protector. Let me just say that the colleagues are going to be distributing the statement in a few seconds from now. I'm aware that some of you are eager to have it for purposes of going. Now, I'm going to open the floor for questions. We will take questions in batches of 4 at a time, 5 at a time, and the Public Protector will respond to each of those as they come. Let me start here. I've noted the gentleman here, I've noted the lady there, and then you. There's 4 at the moment, so let's start with the 4.
Thank you, Carl Cowan from News 24. Where do I begin, Public Protector? That was quite a long list of findings. So I'd like to start at the very beginning, I suppose. You said that there was no consultation between the South African Revenue Service and the National Intelligence Agency when they established this unit. But if we go on Twitter now, there are documents floating around showing memorandums of understanding between SARS and NIA around that time to establish this unit, and NIA later withdraw. I just wondered how you dealt with that in your investigation process. And then secondly, you said that the unit was already operating by the time that a memo was written to former Finance Minister Trevor Manuel. How did you establish that? Can you just enlighten us on that a little bit, please?
Undertaken Mkhwebane, Karen Moore from Business Day. Obviously one of the comments that's going to be made is that the Nugent inquiry found that the so-called rogue unit was lawful. How do your findings relate to that? I mean, do you believe that your kind of investigation supersedes the Nugent inquiry on a legal issue? And then, your decision to not probe, the Jonas Mabwakwa issue, the IT contract, those matters all related, as I understand it, in terms of former Commissioner Tom Moyane's tenure at SARS. Do you feel that you may be placing yourself in a position where you are vulnerable to critique that you have shown a tendency to show bias in terms of the people that you pursue? Or is this just a matter where the Executive Ethics Code demands that you do this investigation first, even though the subject matter that it relates to, happened, as I understand it, over a decade ago? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Muluku Mloto from ENCA. Advocate, some people will possibly say you are overreaching when you instruct the president to take a disciplinary action against the Minister Kwadana within 30 days. Some would say why aren't you just recommending that the president must deal with him? As we saw in previous years, it would be reprimanded. How would you respond to that? And regarding the fact that you said you relied on some provision of relevant legislation to investigate this case, despite the fact that it happened years back. Do you have other cases which you used your discretions, similar discretion, to investigate? And the case, the second phase of the investigations relating to this matter, how far are you with this? Over to you, I'm not too sure if it's...
Second?
I think I heard you say that there are some, particularly relating to the allegation that the investigation into Malema's tax affairs and all that, if I heard you correctly. You did not necessarily include that in this report.
Thank you. The other person said a question has already been asked, so we'll give the public protector an opportunity to respond.
Thank you for the questions. I didn't say there were no consultations. We will be publishing the report. There's a lot of evidence in our possession where there was communication between the two, but there was never a time where there was an approval of the MOU and the approval that they will work together. So I meant that way. So there was that consultation. That as well, that the unit is operating already. We have evidence. It's also in the report and the documentation which we have, because we relied on that. I think it will then, what I would say, relate to what Karen has asked, the issue of the Nugent inquiry. Remember, Karen, the Nugent Commission is not a constitutional institution, and Nugent was chairperson of that commission. And secondly, Nugent never conducted an investigation. So Public Protector, we investigate in details, and again, we will never issue a finding or a finding without evidence in our possession. And I didn't say I'm not going to investigate the issue of Makwakwa and the tender irregularities. And for your information, the issue of the tender irregularities happened way prior to Commissioner or former Commissioner Moyana. This built up to 8 billion, because that tender was extended for more than 12 years, which is in violation of the Constitution, in violation of the PFMA. So that investigation will be conducted. It's part of the second phase of the investigation. And I think the reasoning which I've indicated, that we included the issue of the rogue unit on this part and the issue of the PLA qualifications, but then we will still continue with the second part. Mr. Muloto, I'm not overreaching. The Executive Members Ethics Act is very clear that I need to refer the matter to the President. I'm saying to take disciplinary action. It might be in any other form of disciplinary action. When you reprimand a person, is disciplinary action, well, in the public service space. The other cases where I've used my discretion, Section 6, subsection 9, I would say, I wouldn't tell you the percentage now, but a lot of the investigations which I've conducted, especially these backlog cases which I've found in this institution, all of them are impacted by this provision. Your CX report, section 6.9 was applicable. The Pillay pension matter, it was, the matter was also affected by that. But there's several of them which I've used my discretion to investigate, and if you can, when you receive the statement, it will show you what are the special circumstances, but then on each case, then we will have new special circumstances. So the second part, the one which relates to procurement is at an advanced stage as well, especially the interfront, the tender issue. We have also engaged several times the then acting commissioner, Mr. Kingin, not to renew the tender further, where they committed, we agreed on the time frames of appointing a new company on this matter. So I hope the new commissioner will, or is working on that to prevent again us investigating that part after we have requested them not to proceed. I think other matters which we are still busy investigating, maybe Karen, for your information, are cases which we are at an advanced stage of finalizing. The complaint which was lodged against Batabile Dlamini, Mildred Oliphant, Shongwe, the MEC of Sport in Mpumalanga, the Free State website against Mahashula, Minister of Defense, and Minister Blade Nzimani. So what I'm trying to show here is that we have several other ministers which we have dealt with. So I think doing our work without fear or favor, and there's no bias in this matter, and I indicated that we'll continue investigating the others who are implicated.
Thank you, Public Protector. Let's see if there are any more questions from the floor. I've noted one over here. And I also want to take a second right at the chair, and then there's three at the back. So, okay, Mr. Mwato also wants to come back. So there's six, Mr. Pia.
Yes, thank you, Opa. My second bite, Public Protector. During your investigation of the unit, you've now found that the unit operated as an intelligence unit, it gathered information covertly. Can you provide, or is there in the report, or can you provide us with a list of projects or intelligence operations that this unit undertook between March 2007 and October 2014? We'd very much like to have a look at those and see how you found that these operations were conducted covertly. Thank you.
Just a follow-up on Carl's question. I mean, we know that the former Minister of State Security was at one stage threatening you with legal action or potential arrest over your alleged possession of the IGI report. You've made it very clear in your submission that you received a lot of pushback and quite not a lot of cooperation, and you continuously refer to the fact that even though people denied certain allegations, you actually had possession of evidence which showed that they were not true. Being honest, is this entire report going to be available? Do you have access to intelligence information that, for instance, wouldn't be available in the normal course of events? And are you in any way concerned that, you know, the whole IGI matter, where you were being accused of all kinds of things by the SSA minister, have you got any concerns still about the possession of that particular report? In terms of the Pravin Gordhan matter, do you in your assessment have any views on what disciplinary action he should face? Obviously you can't, you can't lay down, but would you be satisfied if he was reprimanded? Would you believe that that was enough in your view? And then just finally, on if you're able to comment at this stage about the Bosasa matter, because obviously that's very much at the front of everyone's minds. My understanding is that Gavin Watson has asked for certain issues or transcripts and things from you before he answers the questions put to him by the President. Has that delayed your process, or what is happening with that now? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Zingi from Sunday Times. Firstly, PP, other than part 2 of the report of Mr. Gordon, are there any other pending investigations that have been laid against Minister Pravin Gordhan? Secondly, with the now clearing hostility between your office and Mr. Pravin Gordhan, can you assure the people of South Africa that this has not in any way stood in the way of your objectivity as expected in terms of the constitutional mandate? Thank you very much.
Afternoon, people. Momoto from SABC Television News. Recently, the SACP's Solima Pilot claimed that you received information on cases from the rogue intelligence elements and also urged you not to be used as a hired gun of the fight-back agenda. Ever since indicating on taking action against him, have you heard from him? Has he retracted his statement, and if not, what are you going to do? Do you still intend on taking legal action against him?
Zagatana, News 24. Advocate, you've recently written to the President with your concerns over failing to uphold the Constitution in taking action against Pravin Gordhan in the first report.
You're from which?
Zagatana, News 24.
Okay.
What I want to know is, do you have any faith, because the EFF's deputy president has just tweeted that he seems to be cynical that the president will take any action against Pravin Gordhan. Do you have any faith that any action will be taken against him? And what other recourse do you have if the president does not do as requested?
Good afternoon, Public Protector. I'm Khalangwata from Bloomberg News. A follow-up on my colleague's question. Is there any type of specific disciplinary action that you would advocate for in terms of the president taking against Mr. Gordhan? As my other learned colleague said, is a mere reprimand enough? Because these are not the first findings that you're making against Mr. Gordhan. So do you seek separate disciplinary action for the various findings that you've made against him?
All right, thanks, Moloko Mloto again from ENCA. 3 quick questions. There was also a report, as you said, just when you were studying with this Minister Gordhan's report, that you, in any complaint made in terms of the executive members' ethics code should be finished within 30 days. That one is long overdue, I think, by if not 7 months, by 6 months. When can we expect that report? Secondly, you have always been accused by people who said that you essentially are going after the people who are resisting those who wanted to continue with the state capture project. And in this case, you are saying in your statement that there has been continued tone of resistance and undertaking, and with a whole lot of people who are saying you are targeting Minister Pravin Gordhan and a whole lot of allegations leveled against you. What do you think is the motive behind that? Lastly, given the fact that there's a move to remove you as public protector, let's say that motion, when it's tabled in Parliament, it's supported and you are removed. Do you have a recourse if you were to be removed by Parliament and you happen to feel it's a wrong decision? Does it mean that's the end of the road for you?
Last one.
Sorry, PP just hijacked open it. I'm scared that journalists might just take my question. My name is Pule from Open News. First question, I just want to know, Pravin Gordhan brought a court application to have a report and the president reappoints him to cabinet. What happens if the remedial actions are not adhered to? And secondly, PP, some people believe or appear to be under the impression that you are fighting factional battles within the ruling party.
Do you believe you are being used, and are your investigations for the benefit of certain politicians? Just last question. There's also scathing and allegations that you have something against Minister Mkhwebane. I just want to know what's the investigations pertaining to, and when will you be releasing information on it? Thank you.
Which one is it?
Thank you. Over to you, Public Protector.
Thank you. Okay. The questions which were, it's a follow-up, the covertly. The report will reveal what or covert operations which were not related to SARS. Unrelated to SARS mandate, especially this DSO and NPA issue, and we've got evidence revealing that. And regarding the SSA issue, I've seen or I've heard that the NPA declined, or the NDPP, I don't know whether it's the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions or the National Director of Public Prosecutions, who declined to prosecute that matter of the former minister, but including the one which I also opened. So as far as that is concerned, I would just say that matter, it means it's not proceeding, especially from their side. I don't know whether they will still want to make representations. In the report, I'm indicating again, I've written to the President, still requesting the same report, and I've written to the new Minister of State Security, Ayanda Lolo, still requesting the report. Hence, I have the remedial action where I'm saying they need to avail the declassified report. And on the issue of disciplining Pravin Gordhan, or Minister Pravin Gordhan, I won't be dictating to the President. Remember, ministers are appointed by the President and serve at the pleasure of the President. And I wouldn't be dictating to the President what he needs to do. I think this addresses the question by, in fact, there was another question, whether the reprimand or not. So reprimanding a person, it will depend on the President how they view it as a discipline. I mean, he's a constitutional being, and he will decide how he deals with that matter. I wouldn't be prescriptive to him. On Busasa, the transcripts, in fact, the request was, remember, we are not investigating Mr. Watson here. And I indicated that the asking of questions should be sent to me. I sent to him, and it was made very clear to him that we are not investigating him, but we are requesting his cooperation. So that information was availed to him to assist him in responding. And we're still communicating with his attorney to finally send us the report, in fact, the responses, and I will decide what responses to forward to the President. And the Sunday Times, other investigations, I think there was a time where I've issued a YouTube where I indicated that these are the other investigations which we are busy with, and trying to show that, I mean, I receive complaints. I don't go around fishing for complaints. So there is another recent complaint which was lodged when Minister Gordhan was the Minister of COGTA. So it's a recent complaint which has been lodged, and again we will ask for his cooperation as I indicated. And again, the issue, I've indicated several times, I'm here as a constitutional institution and doing my work without fear and favor, and I wouldn't be prejudicing any person. I wouldn't have any grudges against anyone, and the objectivity, definitely, I will always be objective in doing my work. And whatever I'm doing, it's evidence-based. I wouldn't even be labeling a person or just making wild allegations without any basis of evidence in my possession. So I will just end there. SABC TV, Solima Paila, rogue unit. Apparently I'm used as a rogue unit, rogue intelligence gun. So we've written to him to retract in 5 days. He didn't. The attorneys responded, and they are not willing to retract. Yes, we will be taking legal action going forward. News 24, I've written to the president. Do I have faith in the president? Definitely I do. The president knows that he's the constitutional being. Therefore, he needs to live and breathe and the Constitution. And I think he will do the right thing of disciplining Mr. Bodan, especially after every one of them have taken an oath of office in terms of Section 95 of the Constitution, to be obedient to the Constitution. So, the issue of ENCA, Busasa report, indeed, we still trying to finalize the report. Again, is those one Executive Members Ethics Act, which we were supposed to finalize within 30 days. And we are at the final stages of the report. The report will be issued as well, as DPP indicated the last time, that before the end of July. And there's no basis in the people who are alleging that I am against Minister Kodan or people who are fighting state capture. I'm assisting in that particular process, so that we have fairness in this country. We also make sure that all of us are accountable, are equal before the law. If there are allegations, there's complaints which are lodged, I wouldn't just ignore them, because they are issues of allegations which are unsubstantiated. And I don't have any ulterior motives. I'm doing my work objectively, and I don't go around fishing for complaints. As I've indicated, complaints are being lodged, and it's evidence-based. Removal of the public protector, you say, what will I do after the National Assembly? They voted 2/3 majority. Then that's the end of the road for me. So open news, PG review, appointed as minister. Again, the narrative which was perpetuated as if I'm issuing the report because I want the president to act. I'm doing my work. I was not prescriptive to whether the president will appoint Minister Kodan, and that narrative, which is distorted, unfortunately, because that's how I've indicated again, I think the way the reporting on issues relating to this institution are concerned. But when you hear it from me, there was no intention of influencing anything. And further, the people, it's the very same people who are saying believe I'm fighting political battles or I am belonging to a certain faction. Now it means that the DA, Mr. Maimane, is belonging to a certain faction, or the EFF is a faction of the ANC. So if I receive a complaint from DA or I receive a complaint from EFF, I mean, I'm not interested in their political fights or political battles. I'm just concerned about the violation of the Executive Members Ethics Act and the relevant prescripts. So the issue of Gwede Mantashe is this one. I think the recently issued report of the the Amatole, where there were allegations that the wife is involved in that 631 million toilet tender. So that is for the Hawks and the NPA to determine whether there were any criminalities involved in that. So I must indicate that the report will have certain parts of it blurred, especially taking into consideration the security considerations, especially on the equipments which are mentioned in that particular report. So just for your information, thank you so much.
Thank you, Public Protector. I don't know if there is still, okay. There's one gentleman over there who wants to pose a question. Will he be the last one? Okay. Please close.
Yes, good afternoon. Peggy Maile from Channels Television, Nigeria. PB, I just wanted, basically, just a summary, like, the whole process. What is the process that you take from the beginning to the part where you publish a report? So what is that process? Just outline it quickly to a person on the street. How do you reach out? How do you reach the point where you publish the report? What processes do you go through? Thank you.
One last.
PP, there was a report in which you were quoted saying that you had, I think there'd been an attempted poisoning on your life and that you had been subjected to kind of potential threats to your safety as a consequence of the rogue unit investigation. Is that a correct reflection on what you said? And you obviously made a decision to publicly comment on the treatment that you say that you've received during this investigation. Is there any recourse for you in terms of what actions you can take in that regard? Thank you.
That was the last one. I see this number. It is certainly the last one.
The last. My sincere apology. In fact, it is also the last statement or in your media statement. You are now referring to the Holy Bible. You're saying, and so I will go to the king, which is against the law. I mean, this is raising a lot of questions. Who's this king? What law is he against? Some people are going to ask that because in the past you've been saying you only God will remove you. What's the rationale behind this biblical quote, advocate?
Thank you, PP. I think that will be the last one, and so we can close it on that note of spirituality.
Okay, thank you. The process of investigation. The Public Protector investigate, in terms of the Constitution, our mandate, we investigate, we issue a report, we take remedial action. So, and then there are other mandates under the Public Protector Act. So the Public Protector Act then gives the Public Protector the mandate to investigate maladministration, undue delay, abuse of state resources. Also, I have a mandate under the Prevention and of Corrupt Activities. I also have a mandate under this Executive Members Ethics Act. This one is only the Public Protector who has it. And again, I only investigate the ministers, the MECs, the Premier, the President under that. And it's only the Member of Parliament who lodges that complaint. It's not any other person. And it's prescriptive to say within 30 days. Hence, I'm saying we are delaying to finalize that. So if a complaint is lodged with the office under the Executive Members Ethics Act, I don't have a discretion to refuse to accept that. It's not a discretion. I'm obligated to accept it. And when we receive a complaint under the Executive Members Ethics Act, we will write to the implicated minister or MEC or even premier and request information which will assist us, because we'll say there is this complaint, can you assist us, give us information in your possession. Then analyze the information, conduct our own investigation, and then issue a report. But then if a complaint is lodged under the Public Protector Act, there we receive a complaint from the member of the community. If the complaint also has some limitations, let's say it's a court decision and the Constitution says I may not investigate, so I will have to use my discretion whether I proceed with that. If it's a complaint which has been lodged 2 years after its occurrence, also I use my discretion, like in this case, and then there are several instances. In our investigation, all of them, we will write to the state institution, request documents in their possession. So some of them are giving us problems or they delay to respond. That's where sometimes we issue subpoena, we subpoena documents. We also have the power of search and seizure as the public protector. Then we analyze the evidence, then we issue the report. 90% of our work, there's no need to issue a report. We resolve them through alternative dispute resolution. We call the Department of Home Affairs, we sit here, or we call compensation fund, we sit, we tell them about the complaints which we have, and they resolve them, they pay the person whom they are owing, or if it's Home Affairs, they issue the document which the person wants. So that's how our investigation is conducted. I do have the mandate to conduct own initiative investigation, but then I normally use it very rarely due to the workload which we are having. And that's when the Vision 2023 comes in, where we are saying, state institutions, establish your own internal complaints mechanism so that you deal with the complaints which members of the public are having, so that the public protector can then focus on that own initiative. We can then assess the systemic challenges in the country, and we can assist the executive to deal with those matters. So Karen, yes, there was an information which I received on attempt to poison. One of my protectors was poisoned, and some of the property or issues were tampered with, which I wouldn't be open about that, but then indeed there are several instances, and the recourse which I'm having, I am the property of the state, so I expect the state to, in fact, the government to protect me. Hence, we receive the protection from the South African Police Services. The Holy Bible. I must indicate that the Constitution is very clear. In the opening or in the preamble, it does speak about God protecting South Africa. And secondly, I'm not imposing my religion on anyone. And thirdly, when I do this, I only mention it for my own strength, to receive strength and do my work. And I'm not in any way imposing this on anyone. We do have our belief system, and I think Chapter 2 of the Constitution is also very clear that any person has a right to practice their religion. And I'm not using my religion to do my work, but it's only for my, it's where I get my solace. So thank you so much for listening. I think you had an interest also. We will be going around the provinces, having road shows, and we are focusing on Executive Members Ethics Act, the do's and don'ts, and we expect MECs, premiers to work with us, and even ministers, because then it's very clear that some ministers, they don't understand the Executive Members Ethics Act. Educate them, and then so that it's a preventative way not to end up creating work for the public protector. So on the 17th of July, we'll be in the Eastern Cape. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Public Protector. Colleagues, please note that we have not printed the full report. It's about 117 pages long. So we haven't got the paper to print for all of you, but we will be uploading it on the website. We'll also be issuing it on an email to all of you. Okay, so just make sure that you have filled out your details on the register as you walked in. And I've just been told that there's some nibbles in the room next door for those of you who are starving. Thank you.
Who are starving.